Okay, let me start my video. Great. Thanks for showing up. Looks like we got about 40 folks here so far. I will jump right in. Michelle, you have to turn down your volume so I don't hear myself echo. Okay, I've got a short agenda to go through, a document to share, and then I will answer some common questions that I might expect, and then we'll just open it up to questions. I don't see this taking 30 minutes, but we will see. So I'd encourage you, questions you can just type in the chat, but maybe wait till I get most of the way through what I'm going to talk about, as I might answer a lot of them. Okay. First off, obviously Tuesday last week, so I've been 19th, Governor and OHA released new Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance for districts. Remember, the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance is really it's a large document, nearly 100 pages, and a lot more than that if you go to all the attachments, but it's around the health and safety, how we're supposed to operate schools, so that we have strategies in place to reduce the likelihood of virus spread and keep kids and staff safe when they're in school, whether it's masks or social distancing, forwarding or hand washing, or entrance to the building, or the way we move in the building, or activities we don't do or restrict, just a wide range of things. There was a few changes and updates in there around cohorting and transportation and some other things, but most of it stayed the same. The primary change in what was released on the 19th was the 2-week metric look back that gauges how it compares the infection rate in your county with what is allowed. So I'm going to share my screen. Maybe a lot of you have seen this document already, but I will share it here in just a second. Give me a thumbs up that you can see that, Michelle. Okay. So what this tells us, so this is the most recent one that was released on Monday. So it's through the 23rd, and it always goes back 2 weeks. And see my cursor here. So you can see this is the current number that they release these every Monday evening. So good news is, for a while we've been slowly creeping up incrementally. It was this 2-week look back was a little bit less at 283.5 per 100,000 of infectious people in the county. The previous week it was 292.7. If we go to the right hand side of the curve, you see that when we're above 350, schools should be in distance learning. And a question I often get, well, at the beginning of the year, this was required. Schools had no options. It was the law. Our funding was in jeopardy if we would have been over, it used to be a number of 200, if we were over that number. Now it's a recommendation that when we're above 350, we have no kids on campus. When we're in 200 to 350, we can start with our elementary kids, K through 5, and we should be measuring it. Are we rapidly rising? Are we reducing? But this number, which is the window we're in now, and the window we've been in for quite a while, we were only over 350 for a few cycles in December and possibly early January. When we get below 200, from 50 to 200, again, per 100,000, then that's when we can look at expanding to upper grade levels 6 through 12. By the time we get down to under 50, we should be really having all students as much as possible, normal school day. I imagine if we get in that realm, they might even reduce some of the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance around requirements, safety protocols that we would need to put in place. So this was the biggest release and biggest piece of information that changed what we're doing. So again, 2-week look back. We're in this window right here where we can begin to get K through 5 kids on campus. And we can continue with limited in-person for grades 6 through 12. Okay, let me stop sharing and get my agenda back up here. All right, what is our plan? our plan, number one, is to follow the recommendations of what is being put out to us. So how we're going to implement that here in Fern Ridge is pretty consistent around Lane County, and I'll talk about that. I've met with all superintendents on Monday morning, and I kind of have a gauge for what's occurring. And I would say we're kind of in, you know, a larger middle group of districts in a pool of what we're doing. There is a couple districts that are far more aggressive. For example, the one example I would give would be Lowell, has their elementary kids in all day, every day, and they started that this week. There's also districts that are taking a far more cautious approach. The biggest one probably being Bethel. And I would also venture to say I could see 4J going that route in the next couple weeks. And that is saying no kids are coming back on campus until all staff are vaccinated. We're not doing that. We have our staff in support of our plan. Of course, some of them are nervous and worried, and we're trying to do everything to make them feel safe and our students safe and create an environment where kids can learn on campus. But that's where we're at. Our plan will be next Thursday, February 4th, to return our K-3 kids every other day back to an A-B schedule. Then 1 week later, return our 4-5 kids on Thursday, February 11th, for the same thing, A-B every other day, all day. The third piece I would mention is that also beginning on Thursday, February 4th, where we're going to return our students that are in self-contained classrooms. So you should know if your elementary kid is in a self-contained classroom. Our SLC classrooms at Veneta and our Bridges classrooms at Elmira. We're going to try to get them in all day, every day, beginning on the 4th. There might be some build up to that, or some parents might choose maybe to start every other day, or build up to 4 days a week, all day. But that will be the goal for them. And then grades 6 through 12 will be continuing in limited in-person instruction with online comprehensive distance learning until we drop below 200, and then we will have a transition plan with them. It could look, I'm pretty sure it will be an A-B to start with, could build on that, and might even at the middle school start with 6th graders to get them acclimated a little bit, maybe 9th graders a few days before we brought in the rest of the students. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I definitely think we're several weeks away from getting below 200. Hopefully, you know, our continued use of following all the safety rules, the vaccine getting rolled out will all help to reduce that rate in Lane County. One thing I want to mention right now, you know, some questions might come up that either A, I might not know the answer to, or B, might be a little more appropriate for tomorrow night. So each elementary school tomorrow night, same time, Miss Latham at Veneta and Miss Marshall at Elmira will hold a Q&A with parents just like this. The link is on the district website to those Zooms. If you can't find it or need help or something, email either one of those principals, they'll send it to you. But tomorrow night, and they'll be able to talk a little bit more about the specifics in their school, what it's going to look like, help ease any fears, answer any questions that you might have. I wanted to get a short update on vaccines for our staff. As of today, we have no staff vaccinated. However, tomorrow we have our first 2 staff members that are getting vaccinated. And then over the weekend, Friday and Saturday, we have 38 additional staff members getting vaccinated. And that'll be about 20% of our allotted, of our staff members that want to get the vaccine will then have their first dose. The dose that we're getting is the Moderna vaccine. The second dose is 28 days later, and then 14 days after that, you're considered vaccinated. So let's just say hypothetically, teacher gets a vaccination Friday, 28 days later, they get the second, 14 days after that. If they were exposed to someone, there is no more quarantining required. They are vaccinated. So I just wanted to update you. The goal, although I don't know that everything, you know, this is kind of a best case scenario from people I've been talking to, would be to have all of our staff in Fern Ridge vaccinated by the first week of March. So in that scenario, which would be great, by mid-April, we're through every person is through the 28 days plus 14, and we're good to go for everybody that got the vaccine. Okay. Some questions that I just would anticipate, so I'm going to answer right now, and then if you have questions, again, feel free to type them in. First one, why not return K-5 all day, every day? The biggest reason is space, and we cannot, and the requirements that are in Ready Schools Safe Learners. The biggest requirement, I would say there's two. The biggest one being square footage. We can only allow one student for every 35 square feet. So let's assume we had a class, and that's by usable space in a classroom. So if you had a 1,200 square foot classroom, of which none of our classrooms are 1,200 feet, most of them are around 900. But if you had a 1,200 square foot classroom, and there's bookshelves, desks, and other things that take up 200 square feet, so you've got 1,000 usable square feet, then what would that be? That would be for every, let's see, 35, oh, my brain's locking up on me. For every 350 square feet, we can get 10 kids. So for every 1,050, we could get 30 kids. Well, our classrooms, for the most part, and that includes teacher and IA. For most of our classrooms, we have about 700 square feet of usable space, which means we can have 20 people in that room, 18 kids, a teacher, and an aide, hypothetically. So very few, if any, of our classes are 18 students or less. So almost every room would need 2 rooms to accommodate students. So that's the biggest hurdle to getting every kid in every day, all day. The other one I would say was cohorting. There's a limited number of kids, groups of kids that other kids can come in contact with. The total number is 100. Is it in a day or a week, Miss Marshall? A week. So again, bringing in more kids just makes that 100 number a lot more difficult. In a perfect world, we get this up and running starting next Thursday, the following Thursday for 4-5, and it's going great. We're staying in this, let's just say we stay in this 200 to 350 range, and things are going good. As we approach spring break, we could look at possibly our youngest students, kinder, first grade, maybe going to all day, every day. But we need a period of time to see what all of these protocols are going to look like. We haven't yet this year had all K-5 kids in the building in a given week. So that's where we would hope to grow to. That's the primary reason, that square footage requirement, that we can't get all K-5 in all day, every day. Second question I thought I might hear, will there be a CDL option? So by that I mean, I have a 3rd grader, and I'm worried about all the protocols. I attended the meeting tomorrow with Miss Latham or Miss Marshall to hear about all the safety things in place, but I'm still a little concerned that I want to wait. I want to wait due to a medical condition of my child, medically fragile person in the household, or I just want to wait till the vaccine or see how it goes for a few weeks. Will there be an option besides enrolling in our options program for my student? And so what I would say today is, yes, there will be an option. What exactly that looks like, we're really researching 3 different options. I will tell you, it is going to be probably a little bit of several things, meaning a little bit of packets, that kind of thing, going home, homework, distance learning, and hopefully at least a little bit, a component of live interaction with a teacher in their classroom. We ordered some new technology called an OWL back in December, and we just received them today. So tomorrow morning we have a meeting to get a plan to get some PD on these, figure out how they work. But essentially they're a 360-degree camera in a classroom that adjusts microphone, sound, and the camera for whoever's speaking, and it would allow a student at home to engage with their classroom. A couple catches with that. Number one, they're very expensive, $1,000 each, and we ordered 6 of them to try them out, 1 for each grade level. So if we go with that method, we're gonna have 1 kindergarten teacher, 1 first grade, and so on at Veneta utilize that, And any first grader in our district that wants to access CDL that way will be assigned to that one teacher. So it could be they would move to a different teacher. So that's one option. There's a couple others. I won't go into them right now, but just know the biggest thing we need to figure out and will help determine which option we pursue is the number of kids that want to access that. Right now, we have less than 20 kids district-wide that say they want to access it, but we also have another 20 that are still thinking about it. They want to maybe hear tonight. They want to maybe get more information next week, attend the Q&As tomorrow with the building principals. So as we get into next week and we get these owls out and are trying them out, that'll start to get firmed up as we approach the 4th, and you'll be communicated. I do see possibly some lag time between the 4th and when we get that full CDL option up and going. But more information on what CDL will look like for that group of students. Okay. And then the last question I just thought I might get, why not disregard the advice of Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance and bring back grades 6 through 12? So as you recall, in the fall, like I mentioned earlier, we didn't have a choice. Governor said, do this and don't do this. And now, basically, I think it was kind of a political football in that the governor was getting upset that, mostly rural counties in Eastern Oregon were upset at the governor. Hey, we're over here. It looks a lot different than it does in metro areas. Don't require this. So she said, okay, now it's on you. You can do whatever you want. But here's our recommendation. The reason that I believe it's in our best interest to follow this guidance, well, number one, this isn't just the government telling us this. This is what the health experts in Oregon say is best practice. The second, or another reason, is simply our liability. Schools have some legal protections if we have an outbreak in school. We can document with OSHA. There's a lot of documents we've had to fill out, complete processes we've had to go through to say, hey, we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. If something arises, we had an outbreak, people get sick, and they say, well, hey, Mr. Carpenter, how come you were operating? The metric was at 400 and you had, all your kids in grades 6 through 12. Well, I didn't follow the guidance. I was kind of doing my own thing. Then that creates problems. And then thirdly, you'll notice in some districts, I won't name names, but in some districts at school board meetings, you have teachers and staff picketing the school board, wanting them to not reopen schools. You have teachers saying we're just going to quit, retire, not come back to work. And in a system that's big, like, I'll just take Fort J as an example, they probably have 2,000 teachers. Of those 2,000, I bet 200 of them could retire if they wanted. And there's just a large enough group of people saying we're not coming back. Our staff have been very supportive. Our union leadership has worked tremendously well with me, and we don't have that fight. One of the reasons we don't have that fight, we're using Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance. We're saying we're following that. I'm not going to veer outside of what's being recommended to schools. Okay, that wasn't too much, although it was probably enough. That's all the questions I had prepared. So I will see if I can get my chat open. Looks like we at least have something in there. Can I speak to air filtration in the schools? Excellent question, Miss Sarah. Oh, she sent a direct message, so I won't say who it was. So I had a question in my chat box sent to me. Can you speak to air filtration in the schools? Yes. So late summer, I learned more about our air filtration system than I ever thought I would. I was on the roof of several buildings with our contractors that service our HVACs to understand how the system works and what the filters are that are in there. The rating system for filters is called, the acronym is MERV, M-E-R-V. If I was really good, I could tell you what that stands for, but I can't remember. And I believe they go from and again, don't quote me on any of this, but a scale of 1 to 15. I think that's right. And 15 being operating room and 1 being, I don't know, it's going to pick up sawdust in the air. typically schools, the standard for schools, I want to say was a MERV 6 or 7. And that's what we've always used. We upgraded to a MERV 12. They cost about 3 times as much as our previous filters. And over the first couple months of the school year, keeping in mind in our district, the number of, they're kind of just like a home filter you would put in yours. Some of them are a little bit built bigger, that you'd slide into your HVAC unit at home. We have around 1,200 of those throughout the district. And so it took some time, but over a couple months, the maintenance staff swapped out all of our filters. And now that I'm thinking about it, I want to say we went to MERV 13s out of 15. We swapped out to our new MERV 13s, and that's what's in our building and will remain in our building for the foreseeable future. When it's time to recycle those out, certainly through this school year, maybe beyond, we'll be using that level of air filtration. Okay, how do cohorts work with the bus routes? So I don't know that I'm the best expert on this. It might be building principal, so I'm going to speak to what I know, and then I have Miss Marshall here manning the waiting room, so I might turn it over to her. Cohorts, a good thing about the new guidance is that when kids are returning to school, our transportation is no longer counted as a cohort. Now, there's a lot of protocols they still have to do on the bus. They're supposed to do a screening when the kid comes on. They're supposed to mark down that they were on there, so we can, again, track if there was a kid that had symptoms. We know who was on the bus. We try to use social distancing as much as we can. However, it's not required. We have a method of filling up the bus from the back to the front, unloading back, all these different things they're doing on the bus. But what am I trying to get to? That transportation is no longer a cohort. However, it is a cohort for limited in-person instruction, grades 6 through 12. And there's a limited number of cohorts that kids can interact with and staff can interact with in a given day or week. I can't give you those exact numbers off the top of my head. But for example, I want to say it's in limited in-person instruction, it's 3. Is that right, including transportation, Michelle? So it's a low number. She thought 3 to 5. But an example would be if I go to school on one bus and home on another in a limited in-person, there's 2 cohorts. I can only interact with 3 other groups of students throughout my entire day. In our regular return to school, which will be starting next week at the elementary schools, we also need the cohort, and it's really about tracking which kids are together and ensuring that I never interact with more than 100 kids in a given week in total. So cohorting is just about knowing where every kid is in relation to other kids. And it's really important for staff members as well. Our itinerant staff that move around might need to do a lot more virtual meetings, maybe some of our ELL students, things like that. But specifically, I'll make a note to both Michelle and Lisa. If you want real detailed information on cohorts, well, one, you could go to OD website and look at that Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance, but they'll be prepared tomorrow night to give you the exact numbers.
And Gary, let me say a couple things. If we're in limited in person, they can only be in 2 cohorts per day. So transportation is one of their cohorts, and then whoever they interact with during the day is their other cohort. But they can be in so many cohorts per week. I think it's 5.
Oh, yeah. And
then when you're in limited in person, your staffing is also limited to the number of cohorts they can be exposed to. Whereas when we move to hybrid, K3, 4, 5, it's a little bit different there too. And when we move to hybrid, the buses don't have to be cohorted anymore, but they still have to contact trace and visually screen as they get on and off. So that's important to know.
Okay, looks like questions are rolling in. You addressed this, but is the district goal for students to end up all day, every day, eventually the school year? It's completely contingent on the metrics having to change, or also changing the space guidelines for classrooms, or could it end up being district choice as you establish what is? So it can be up to district choice. Everything is district choice right now, like I mentioned, but we're going to follow the guidelines. My goal is to get everyone back in school. all day, every day. That will not occur, for example, if we stay above 200. So time is going, we're just going to have to see. I'm really advocating, because right now, what the metrics say is all these requirements of school safe learners, they're the same if we're above 350. If we get under 350, they're the same. If we're under 200, they're the same. If we're under 50, they're the same. What I've really been advocating for with other superintendents, with ODE, with anybody that I can talk to, is to scaling those requirements so that, yeah, when we're in this range right now, for example, that 35 square foot example, let's use that. When we get to below 200, let's drop it to 25 square feet. When we get below 100, let's drop it to 15 square feet. So we can scale our safety protocols depending on where we are with our metrics. I will also say another piece of information that I get every Wednesday, I think is when I'm getting it, is our local data. So that number, whatever it was, that we were 283 per 100,000 in Lane County, I also get a printout of an email sent to me of a document that shows me what our per 100,000 rate is in our 2 zip codes here in Veneta and Elmira. And it's every report for the last 2 months, it's been lower than the county rate. And actually last week, it was the lowest percent in relation that it's ever been. So the county rate was around 300 and our rate about 60% of that. So around 180 per 100,000 out here in our area. That'll be another important piece of information that I use as we're moving around. Either way, so maybe the county rate's going down, but all of a sudden we had a big outbreak wherever out here in our area, and our district, yeah, the county rate's looking good. It's at 214, but our 2 zip codes are at 538. That's going to impact our decision. The same thing will be true. The county rate's showing we're at 400. We should really be shutting down. Well, our primary zip code of our students that we serve is at 183. Okay, that's information we're going to use to say we're staying open. I would also say that, because just because I haven't mentioned it, when we get above 350, which could happen, our K-5 kids come back. I was on a call last week with the primary modeler from OHSU. So he's just a mathematician and tracking the trends of the virus since it started. He predicts a surge similar to November, December, not too high, but a surge in about 2 weeks. So we'll see if that plays out. If it does, and we go above 350, that doesn't mean we need to shut down the elementary school. What it does mean is we're not going to expand. We're not going to bring more kids in, longer days, try to go to kindergartners full days. What it also means is that we can stay open as long as we're showing all the things we're doing in the school, hand washing, social distancing, masks, cohorting, is we're not having spread in the school. So when somebody gets sick, we didn't end up with 14 people sick. It was just the student that got sick, was positive. So know that as we get higher, doesn't necessarily mean we need to shut down. What would shut us down, man, even though we're doing all this stuff, it's transmitted in the school. All the studies so far say that schools that do these things, the virus isn't transmitted. Schools are not super spreaders of COVID-19 if they implement all these strategies. Okay. Beyond the trailing average per 100,000 people, what are the process protocols when there are COVID-19 cases in the schools? Communication, tracing, quarantine, etc. Okay, so it really depends. So if we have a district nurse in a case where, well, let me give you one example. A kid wasn't in school for a week and they tested positive. They weren't on campus. They weren't engaged with any other kids. We're not communicating that with the larger community. Say, hey, there's a 4th grader somewhere in town that was positive. And we're just telling everybody that. They haven't been on campus. You don't need to worry. But if there was a 4th grader that was on campus, I believe we go back 48 hours. Our nurse knows all the protocols on this, and she really helps support these families. We contact trace. Who are the students that are considered a contact of this kid? And there's a definition of that. I believe it's 15 minutes continuous presence in the vicinity of the student. And then our nurse would contact, the principal would put out some information. There would be a website post if we're quarantining a class and they're having to isolate. So what I can say is if a case is at all connected to the school and there's other close contacts, every parent will be informed about what that is. What I think I would also say is that, let's say you have a 4th grader and there was a positive kindergartner and your student never had any contact with that student. You might hear about it on social media or somewhere, but we're not going to call you and tell you, hey, a kid your student never rode the bus with, never had lunch with, never was on recess with, never was in a room with, tested positive. You won't hear that. And then what are the protocols, or what are the plans if the trailing averages increase above the threshold set up by the state school? So I kind of talked about that. We're using that as a guideline. If they get above, we can still stay in person, but we'll certainly be monitoring it closely. We'll consider our local data, and we'll consider, is the virus being transmitted at school? That will be what shuts us down or makes us change our mode. All right, what's the plan for students to access classwork lessons if they have to quarantine or a class has to quarantine? So kind of different there. If it's just one student quarantining, probably be a combination of things. From packet work, maybe they'll go right into our CDL model we have set up for other students that are in CDL. If it's a whole class, it'll probably look similar to what it looks like right now with comprehensive distance learning. Zooms throughout the day, start time, classes. That's what that would look like. How do you plan to address kids who show up to school with visible symptoms? And how do you plan to address situations where dishonesty is apparent with symptoms and potentially positive cases? Let me take this one piece at a time. How do you plan to address kids who show up to school with visible symptoms? So every student is screened, asked a few questions, they're looked at. We're not taking the temperatures of every student. However, every room has one of these thermometers. At any time, if a teacher, sees a kid's flushed or whatever, hey, can I take your temperature? We'll take Mr. Carpenter's here real quick. And I'm good, 98.1. So if we have a kid with visible symptoms, we have a space that they go to. Or if they're just complaining, hey, I'm not feeling well, it's 10 o'clock, they're coughing, they have a fever, whatever. Name of the space, what's the name of our space, Miss? The waiting room, that's what it's called. They're going to go to the waiting room. The waiting room is staffed by a staff member who have appropriate PPE, try to make the kid feel comfortable. They're isolated from everybody else. We're contacting the parent, kid's going home. Maybe he just had the allergies, he's got a cold, whatever. We'd follow up with them about their symptoms, and our nurse will be really involved with that. But each building has a waiting room for kids that exhibit symptoms. How do you plan to address situations where dishonesty is apparent with symptoms and potentially positive cases? Yeah, I mean, even outside of a COVID environment, we kind of deal with that, or elementary secretaries and principals and office staff are experts at that. I don't think, I don't know, maybe you can jump in, Michelle, but I don't think that most kids that are sick at that age, they're going to tell you they're sick. They're not feeling well. And, if that situation arises, I'm going to trust the principals to use their judgment and say, hey, no, we, don't think you feel good. You got a temperature 101. We're going to the waiting room. We're contacting somebody. Got to go home. Well, what's that? Oh, Miss Latham. Yes.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. We've been pleasantly surprised. Actually, we thought this was going to come up more often. We just haven't had issues like that. I think the issues that we've had is a kid comes in. We used to ask, do you have a runny nose? Do you have a cough? Do you have a headache? I mean, we were asking extensive questions. And what we found out is, like, the kindergartners would say, no, go on. They had a runny nose. Okay, so we automatically would put them in the waiting room and call a parent to come get them. But as far as anyone trying to, medicate their kid and send them, which we used to see in the normal school environment, we just aren't seeing it. I think parents know they're going to have to come pick up their kids. So far, pleasantly surprised.
Okay, then the last part of that question, situations where parents have made this, meaning school, their care plan, and are left without a viable option. Yeah, on that given day, we'll keep the kid. If we can't get anybody to come pick them up, we can possibly transport them home. That occurs in a normal world, whether it's getting a bus or a principal sticking them in their car, and we're taking them home or to grandma's house because mom's at work or whatever, so we'll work with them. Or they're going to stay in the waiting room. We'll get them some activities. If they have no emergency contacts, there's no way we can get a hold of anybody. I don't know that that's really, I actually think it might be better in this environment. We'll have fewer instances of this, like Miss Latham said, than in a normal school year where it's buck up, go, get out the door, you're going to school. So, and I will say, and it's on our parent COVID-19 page, there's a good document about when should I keep my kid home. And we're going to really saturate our district website, social media with that document beginning next Monday. That'll be a good reminder for our parents on when's it okay to send your kid to school? When should you keep them home for a day? Beyond the reasons you gave for teachers threatening to retire in Bethel-4J, what are the other reasons their schools are choosing to stay distanced until all their staff are vaccinated? And how do you feel these identified risks have been mitigated in Fern Ridge? Beyond the reasons you gave for teachers, not having enough staff, what are other reasons schools are choosing to stay? What are the other reasons? I think just fear, is one. In some districts, there's in some districts they have specific examples, frankly, of tragedies of someone close to the district. Maybe they were a little bit older, medically fragile, but dying of COVID-19. I can tell you that would probably impact a district's decision a little bit. What I can tell you here is that there should not be one element of our blueprint. Our blueprint is the document that's online. You should be able to see it. That documents all of our safety protocols that are in place. One of the things that we'll be doing here in the next few days is sharing our blueprint with our teachers and our classified staff and saying, here's everything we have in place. From the perspective of a teacher, what could we be doing better to make you feel more comfortable, make the kids' experience at school be better, make the parents' experience be better, make everyone safer. What are those things? We'll make adjustments. Same thing with our classified staff. Here's our blueprint. Here's everything we're doing. Do you think we need to make any adjustments? Talk to your peers, get us back. We'll have our blueprints finalized and everything in place by next Thursday. And there'll always be a work in progress. We'll have a safety team that meets often at the building, talk about how things are going. Where do we think, where we can do better? So, other things besides like the thermometer, the air filtration filters, specific examples. Every room, let me grab one of these. Every teacher has their own cleaning supplies, and we have, I don't know how many, but pallets of these containers in our warehouse that are wipes, disinfectant wipes in every room. There's a higher level of cleaning happening and tracking happening. I'm confident that when we were in our, we had K through 3 come in AB a day every day. And we had some cases of COVID. We did not have spread at a school, significant spread. And it has, overall went well. So time will tell. We'll see how it shakes out, and we'll be willing and ready to not only adjust, but spend the money to adjust if there's things that we can do to make students and staff safer. Are zip codes really an effective way to understand the numbers when Veneta has such a high population that commutes to Eugene for work? And how are these zip code numbers measured? Yeah, that's why it's certainly not the end all be all. But for most of our students, that isn't the case. But for sure, that's why it's not, that's one of the reasons that we're using county data. It's just a piece of information. So, right now, like I said, we're about 60% of the county. that's good news. If we were 160% of the county, that would be a piece of information that's not such good news. So it certainly isn't going to be the only measuring stick. It'll just be one thing that we look at. Michelle Marshall put a post in there around keeping, and that's the document that we'll be sharing next week, I think, about when to keep your kid home. The guide the district's firing. Why aren't we taking temps of all students as they enter? So that was a message sent. You might not see that message. It's sent to me privately. That's something we can have considered and just decided not to. Why is that? I think, well, a couple of reasons. One, just the tone that sets at the door, the time it would take. And if for us to take someone's temperature, we need their, it wouldn't be something we would probably want to get some kind of implied consent that it's okay for me to take your kid's temperature. So it could be, let's say I hear from my teachers, which I haven't heard, or my principals or parents that said, hey, we should do this. Well, it's certainly something we can look into. That question was asked in our superintendent meeting today, actually, at 4 o'clock, and 2 school districts out of our 16 in Lane County are doing that. So 14 of us were not. If you think that that's important, it's certainly something we could talk about, and I'd be willing to see what that looked like. When is your child too sick? There's that document. Okay, another direct message to me. Sorry I was late, but I was wondering about the 10th grade A and B schedule, and if we're going back to school regarding the A and B schedule, meaning who is which schedule. So as far as 10th graders, like I said, we need to get below that 200 mark. I don't see that happening in the next several weeks. As soon as we're below that 200 mark, we will be looking at grades 6 through 12, below that 200 per 100,000, getting them back in school. Right now, like I've tried to say, we could do that. We could say, Governor said, Mr. Carpenter, if you want to, even though the county's at 293, if you want to bring your high school kids back, that's on you. But hopefully you heard the rest of the conversation of why I think that's not a wise choice on our part, and it puts us in a level of legal liability that is too high for my liking anyways. Sorry I jumped on late. Did you state a tentative ETA for going back? So our ETA for our elementary kids is not tentative. It is K through 3 next Thursday, the 4th, 4 through 5, the 11th, and older kids when the metrics show. And somebody typed that in there. I guess I could have rolled forward and saw that. If every child were to plan to return when their grade in school reopens, do the schools have the capacity to handle those numbers, even with block scheduling? No, if we have to meet all the requirements of Ready Schools, Safe Learners. The biggest two being cohorting and 35 square feet per student. That's why we have to be on the AB schedule. So I have 18 kids in my class. If we're on an AB schedule, that means that my roster is split, meaning that I might have a max of 9 or 10 kids on any given day. Yep, that would be correct. Although what I would say is our classes are actually higher. That would be correct to say, right? This year, our average class size is higher because we've pulled some of our elementary kid teachers over to options. So as an example, there might be some in that range, but there's very few. There's also some over 30, 34. So they're going to have, 17, 18 in each class split up. But we have we have 3 classroom teachers in options, Ms. Marshall, or 2? 2 and Mary? Yeah, so 2 of our normal, if we were in our regular environment, we have 2 classroom teachers that have been pulled out of our regular environment and are helping support the options program. So what you described there, the 18 kids, yep, that would be the case. You'd be in a group of 9 or 10. That would be a good question, for your classroom teacher or the principal tomorrow is, hey, my kid's a 3rd grader. What's that? Oh, that is Miss McGuire.
Yeah,
What?
that's what I've got my son's name on there, but I put my situation in there.
Oh, I see.
So,
So
yeah.
we have Miss McGuire. So she was just giving her example. She has one of our smaller classes. So she says, I have 18 kids in my class. I see. I was thinking reading that as a hypothetical. I have 18 kids in my class. And so, yes, that means she sees 9 of her kids. It could be a little bit more because, and here, all of this is complicated. But on the complicated scale, one of the more complicated things to solve is transportation. I won't get into why it's complicated, but it's complicated. So in that example, it probably won't work out perfectly if Miss McGuire has 18 kids, that she has 9 and 9, but it will be close. If capacity is a potential issue, even with AB scheduling in place, do the schools have a way to prioritize getting the kids into school who need it most? So 2 things. In an AB schedule, capacity isn't an issue. It's only an issue to get them in all day, every day, and maintain the Ready Schools, Safe Learners guidance, again, the cohorting and the 35 square feet. In our AB schedule, totally handle it. No problems. As far as prioritizing getting the kids in school need it the most, I feel like that's what we're doing. We know our elementary kids. There's some reasons around, research around how they don't spread the virus as much, et cetera, but it's critical for them to get in person. Secondly, as I mentioned, some of our self-contained classrooms, all of our self-contained classrooms, our highest needs students in grades 6 through 12, that's who's coming on for instruction for 2 hours a day. In K through 5, that's who's going to have the ability to come on all day, every day, is some of those highest need students. And then moving forward, as we grow, we're not going to all of a sudden snap our fingers and say, okay, every kid all day, every day. We'll start with probably kindergartners. If we get to the upper grades, we'll start with maybe 6th graders, maybe with seniors before 10th graders. There'll really be some thoughtful processes in place for how we're going to expand, with that being the biggest priority. Who are the students that need this the most? Do I see sports returning to both elementary and high school at all? If so, when? So we're expecting, there is a plan for high school. We'll start with high school. High school sports. It's on the district website. If you have a high school kid and you have a hard time finding where it's at or whatever, you can call the athletic director, Miss Whartonby. But I want to say it's the 3rd week of February, maybe around the 20th. I don't remember the exact date, that their season starts. However, football starts February 8th. However, right now, the governor, football is in a no, can't play football because it's a contact sport. There's a couple contact sports, football, wrestling, etc. So unless something changes, that might not occur. But in the current plan, there'll be shorter seasons, and the seasons will extend. So our last season, our spring season, will extend further into June, maybe even July, after the school year ends. But we hope that there'll be an opportunity. As far as elementary, the district doesn't fund elementary or middle school sports. We try to support our partners in TSP and all their great volunteers to use our facilities. And back in the fall, we worked with them to make it possible for soccer. And we're working on a plan before things changed in December to allow them access of gym use, following all the protocols, etc. And so as it's allowable, we'll continue to try to work with them, be in compliance with what's required. And hopefully there will be an opportunity coming forward. I think we'll really have a lot more information in the next 2 weeks for high school sports. Okay, I got through all the questions. I went a little longer than I thought. Appreciate all of you staying on here. I'll just emphasize as I look to see, make sure nothing else pops up. Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, Miss Marshall at Elmira, Miss Latham at Veneta. If you have more specific questions about kind of the protocols in place, specific questions about your student's classroom, please share that link with everyone. Your connections in the community, encourage them to come. I'm confident. We've got a great staff that wants to get our kids back at the earliest possibility. And I'm also confident I'm doing everything I can, along with the rest of the administrative team, to support them to do that safely. Yes, thank you, Miss Tiana. A question there about, hey, when the case counts get under 200, will there be another Zoom meeting with more? Yeah, I would certainly anticipate that. If we get to a point where, hey, it's looking like next Tuesday, we're rolling with some middle school, high school kids, we'll definitely have something similar to this, share with parents what it's going to look like for them and when that's going to start. And Ms. McGuire says she can tell us as a teacher, she's excited and feels confident bringing the kids back. Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. Email me anytime if you have a specific question, and I really encourage you to attend tomorrow night. Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.